Your world might not be what you think. Chapter 1, Planet Earth. Sure, it's very easy to deny the existence of something that cannot be seen. But then, since when was seeing the only way that proves the validity and truth of things? I'm starting this series of videos because, quite frankly, I'm astounded to learn some things that I've learned about what great deception there exists in this life on this planet that we all live, and even within our so-called proven scientific facts of our lives, our purpose, our origins, and our existence on this crazy planet we all call home and we all call planet Earth. So this is chapter or part 1, which will include the introduction in the module here that I'm subtitling Planet Earth. All right, this will include the introduction as well. So many people in this world are very programmed and taught by science, even science in some cases, right? That only seeing is believing, or seeing is believing, and that if we cannot see something in the conventional way, our eyes or with a telescope or an technological aid of seeing, it must not then be real if we can't see it. But I've discovered something in my life that proves that there's a whole other explanation that is more accurate to what is real, what is truth, and what is not in our world. And it's the same world for all of us. We all share the same world. And the universe. We all share the same universe. And it is the unseen things or element that can be proven, and even proven in some cases just as true as the seen world. And in fact, it's the unseen world in many aspects and in many respects that makes up our truth. And so it must be considered in any thing that we are going to call fact or explanation or proof that is tangible in the things that we see. Now, I understand some things are very clearly true, like physical objects. I'm now talking into a camera and on a computer. That's all true. You can put your hand on it, you can knock on it. It's a computer, it's a camera, it's all true, right? The things around me, the coffee cup, the speakers next to me, the window, the guitars behind me, all that is true physical objects. But I'm saying there are some things that make up truth that are unseen. All right, let's just take a few examples to begin with that absolutely prove that there are some very elusive things in this life and in this world, yet they are just as real as the noses on our faces, or the car parked in our garage, or the computer I'm on right now. But they cannot be seen, smelled, tasted, touched, heard, or any other detectable sense. So I was in the mall today in a certain restaurant that I like when I check my phone to connect to a Wi-Fi network, and saw that there were at least 20 available different choices of Wi-Fi networks for my phone to connect to in this little restaurant. And I thought for a moment, wow, there are all of these Bluetooth and Wi-Fi, television, radio, communication signals flying all through the air in this place around me, bombarding my body and everything else, whizzing at some incredible speed everywhere all around. And yet there is no tangible evidence whatsoever for the existence of all of that going on. And without my phone device or some other device to tell me, I wouldn't have been able to know this yet. It is 100% true that these things, these networks and communication signals and waves and microwaves and other waves, all do in fact exist. I submit here, in fact, that there are many things about our lives in this age of technology that we now have. And within our story, the story of the human being, the history of the human being, that are also 100% true, no matter how fantastic it might be to think about, that cannot be detected unless one knows exactly how and where to look for them. But if one does learn how and where to look for truth in this world, a whole other dimension of truth unfolds and is proven, which is largely contrary to that which we have been taught and that which we now know from all the wisdom the world could muster and teach us along the way. How about carbon monoxide, or any gas for that matter that's not visible? We know it exists. It kills people actually every year, and yet there's no human way to detect it without technology's help, without a detector, right? A tornado and wind itself, for that matter, is entirely invisible, completely invisible, without the debris and dirt flying around in it to reveal it, swirling around. We wouldn't even know the shape or size of a tornado if there weren't debris in there that reveals it, that we can see. The point I make for this video, this part, is that reality is not always what it seems our senses to be, and it's a very big mistake to assume that if a thing cannot be seen, heard, touched, smelled, or tasted, that it doesn't exist, because that's simply not true. In fact, if we consider all the documented societies in human history that are documented, there emerges a very contradictory thread throughout them, which seems to point to other things that cannot be seen or detected, that are the focus of men instead of the things that are seen for some strange reason. In other words, these societies all have certain things they are focusing on and spending a lot of their time, energy, and resources toward, that cannot even be seen or detected by the senses. These I'm referring to now are spiritual practices, ceremonies, idols, statues, and things worshipped. In fact, when one really evaluates it, much more of our time as a congregate, as an aggregate, altogether in all of human history, has been spent on this focus of spiritual things that in many ways cannot be proven in conventional ways, let's put it, yet it is a fact which should make everyone stop and think for a moment about why that would be. It's far beyond the possibility of coincidence in all of these human documented societies. What sense would it make if we believed, as science tries to teach us, that we are just some accident of creation, and something as absurd as the fact that there is a great human creation that we know of, all of these human beings we have on this planet, that has consciousness, reason, intelligence, and this indwelt need to worship something unseen, to make idols and statues, to spend all of this time with ceremonies and all of these resources and energy toward something, if we simply got here by chance and had no creator, or had no, better put, had no innate nature to want and to need to worship something, and to need to have love, which, by the way, only exists in human beings. If we came from primates, why do primates not experience love? And why does the animal kingdom not have forethought and planning and things of that nature as human beings do. Now, I'm not here to argue that, and I'm really not here to present anything one way or the other. I am here to share with everyone my experience after going through hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours of research on every single topic and reason and experience that one could think of to explain our purpose, our origins as human beings, and why there are so many questions with the so-called scientific facts that we are taught as we are educated, and I am educated. I have a Bachelor of Science degree from a university in industrial engineering. I'm a very analytical and logical thinking person. So actually, when viewed in the light of all the evidence of all ancient cultures that I was just talking about, and still humans to this day for that matter, focusing largely on this other dimension of things and the things in it, the accepted evolutionary view makes no sense whatsoever of any kind, and we've only just begun. In other words, we know that cultures like the Egyptians, the Aztecs, the Mayans, the Romans, the Greeks, the Persians, and every other one that's known, modern, well, we call them modern, but every other documented civilization going all the way back in all of human history, without fail, by the way, without a single one not included, devoted most, not just some, but most of their lives and time to some kind of worship or focus on things spiritual, which science tries to postulate is just a myth and just a chance and just an accident, yet it is a very common thread in every single case. And what they're spending their time on, there's no visible evidence for it. What sense does that make in the world and the world model that tries to explain everything to us today? None whatsoever. In fact, also there is overwhelming evidence of the truth that the spiritual realm does, by the way, exist in many areas that simply are not tangible directly, but indirectly prove its truth beyond any doubt at all. Right now, as millions and millions of unseen communications and media produced waves assault our bodies, there is great spiritual activity going on in the same way, unseen and unfelt for the most part, yet both are just as true as the car in your garage or the house or building that you now sit in. In this presentation, I'll show to anyone who can set aside for the next 45 minutes or so everything that they've learned about their existence and origin for the moment, beyond any doubt at all that the most fantastic and seemingly unbelievable explanation sometimes in this world turns out to be the truth. There will be left no option for any other belief once this is viewed in this manner, I hope. But in order to receive it in full, one must consider the evidence objectively and without any prejudice from any teachings of this world. Now, that's a very difficult thing to do. When you mention things like I'm going to present and talk about here to people, they get all upset because it shakes their foundation of what they know and have learned. I'm saying for this, you need to put aside that foundation of so-called facts for the moment, and let's just say we'll look at this and see if some of those so-called facts might be in question now. The reason for all of this necessary renewing of the mind that I'm talking about is because of and evidence for the spiritual realm, as we will see as I go on further. For the purposes of discussion here, it needs to be stated that there is a sort of general rule in this world regarding things that are not necessarily seen, as in the case of the radio waves that I talked about earlier in the introduction, the wind, gases and such, that goes something like this general paradigm that needs to be broken. It goes something like this. If a thing seems like it's too much of a coincidence, it must be too much of a coincidence to be an accident or to happen by chance. And we've already talked about some of those evolutionary questions. But in other words, when there is evidence against any assertion of fact, anything that's a scientific fact is supposed to be 100% proven. So when there's evidence against any assertion of a scientific fact that directly contradicts it, then this so-called fact is no longer valid, but suspect now of being only part or in total the wrong explanation for something, the wrong truth for something. Okay, for a brief time, in the very beginning of the X-ray, everybody knows what an X-ray is, right? When they first discovered X-rays and detected them, it was believed that they were totally harmless. Why? Because there were no measurable problems or dangers with them. They can't be seen or felt at all physically, right? But over time, of course, it was discovered that the exposure to them is deadly in higher doses. And by the way, here is yet another example of something entirely undetectable with our senses, yet is absolutely truth. And by the way, it happens to be deadly. William Röntgen is credited with the discovery of the X-ray, and there were many early victims of the lethality of these X-rays before it was discovered that they are harmful to living tissue. In other words, many people died by exposure to them every day, day in, day out. It was only by secondary means of detection and later effects of prolonged exposure that manifested in tangible ways that we've learned now, right, that they're a real thing, number one, and that they are very dangerous and harmful to living tissue, yet we lived with them for many thousands of years, completely oblivious to their existence and their truth. Yet X-rays do exist in the universe as well, naturally. It is this way with the spiritual realm as well. But now, as we have history and technology to help us, we can also be just as sure that it is real, and we can even know the very nature and origin of it, the spiritual realm, without any doubt left at all with an objective look. I should tell everyone that I'm a logical person, as I mentioned. I do have the college degree in industrial management engineering, and I'm very much the kind of person that requires proof of any given thing in order to believe it. That's why I have so many hours of researching this stuff. But before I was radically transformed by the truth of my existence, and by the way, every human's existence, I believed in many, many things and researched many things. I would more easily believe, in fact, before this happened to me 5 years ago, that aliens from distant other planets are real, than the very truth, which is actually much more plausible and should be much more easily believed and accepted, which is they are not. There is no evidence for them ever being here or ever coming here or existing whatsoever that's tangible and that's actually could be called scientifically proven. So I make this video to share with anyone who is willing to hear it this testimony of truth from my experiences that has been revealed in my life. And because in the process of finding this truth to my existence and creation, I have discovered that this world that so many exist in every day, day in and day out, oblivious to, is much more a lie than I ever thought possible. And so much so that some things are just shocking to discover as one goes down this road to the truth of all things. So let me go on by showing a few things that should make everyone at least raise an eyebrow and question some things about what the mainstream educational system teaches about this world that we all share, regardless of race, color, religion, or any other factor of the person. We should all be questioning things when we look at things in this way. I don't know about any of you, but I was taught that we live on a planet that is a ball, a sphere, in other words, that is spinning about a central axis at the speed of about 1,000 miles per hour or 1,600 kilometers per hour. That's around its center, and I'll show some video and some models as I speak here. Now, before anybody gets too excited, I don't know exactly what the truth is about this Earth and this planet. I really don't. But I do believe that it's something different than what is most often taught in our mainstream science and classes in college education, or just in school in general. So bear with me while, again, we objectively look at these things. So here we are. This moment, we're told, you and I spinning about a fixed center axis point in the center of the Earth at 1,000 miles per hour continuously without stopping or slowing down. Add to this that we are also told that the whole Earth as a planet is hurtling around the sun at an unbelievable speed of 67,000 miles per hour while spinning 1,000 miles per hour on an axis, 60,000 miles per hour around the sun. And that, by the way, is 107,000 kilometers per hour. Now, please pretend that you had never learned these things in school, and look objectively at what this really means for us who stand upon this ball that is spinning dizzily in this manner in two completely different and opposing movements, no less. And that's not all. It goes further. Let's assume that this is true, and if so, science as exact and full of proof as it claims to be should be able to reproduce this effect in a smaller scale in some experiment, as is the case with any scientific fact, right? We should, in other words, be able to get a small ball and spin it relative to its size and shape in a corresponding manner that is in the same mathematical ratios relative to the size that represent what we are told that we are experiencing right now on this Earth, right? No problem. But here is the problem. Though, try to take, say, a basketball and get it spinning around its center and hurtling through open space in an equivalent scaled down ratio, of course, maintaining the speed which we are told is constant of our Earth spinning around the axis and our Earth hurtling around the sun, and then place anything on the surface of this basketball and see what happens. Now, I know what everybody's going to say right now is, but gravity, right? But gravity, right? Well, if you look up gravity, you can't even get a firm scientific explanation for what causes this. It's not the spinning that causes it. The spinning flings things off of the ball, and that's what happens, by the way, every time any model is ever attempted to reproduce what's going on. Now, to me, again, a scientific fact should be reproducible, very easily proven in an experiment, yet we cannot do so with spinning balls and hurtling balls. Gravity or no gravity, nothing stays on the ball, nor will stay on the ball, unless it is literally glued on. And even in this case, eventually at these dizzying speeds that they say we're constantly moving at, it most likely over time will still fly off because the forces acting upon it are so great. Now, I want to say to you all that I have this engineering degree, as I keep speaking of. And for much of my early research into the truth of all things, I couldn't even get myself to entertain the fact that it could be misinformation, let alone it could be completely false in its nature. In other words, it's not proven to my satisfaction because there's no model that can prove it, and I can't see how a ball could be moving like that and people and things just stay on it. Gravity is not a strong force, by the way. All right, but anyways, now I say to you that I've tried very hard to answer every question that arises with such a fantastic claim as we are told about the movement of the Earth and the galaxy, by the way, which I'm going to show earlier. And by the way, we stand upon this Earth during all of this so-called spinning and hurtling. And I have found literally that it's all just accepted as fact. And there's nothing in any kind of scientific model or facts or proof of it at all. It cannot be in any way verified or scientifically proven, which by itself makes it an unproven fact. And there's just too many questions about how it's even possible. Much of the proof of the spinning Earth says that because we can see the stars rotating in the sky, we must be then spinning. But this conclusion can only be said to be one possibility, and another is that the stars or the heavens are the things which are moving and not this Earth. Again, I don't draw any conclusions because I don't have all the answers, but I do know how to look at something objectively and scientifically. So then we also see that the proof of the spinning can be seen in the fact that snipers have to take into account this rotation of the Earth when they shoot a bullet at a target. They call it the Coriolis effect, I believe. Well, in my research, I did discover that shooters with a range of 100 meters or more, let's say, do expect that they have to adjust their shot according to something that they are told is the Earth's rotation, but it could actually also be explained as very simply now the pull of gravity, right? In fact, there's a pull downward for all things with mass on this planet. We know because just drop any object with weight and it falls downward. But the very same thing would happen in the very same way if we were on a stationary surface and could be easily described as the mass of the object, the bullet in this case, having density and weight, and in this force, downward force, therefore it simply dropping as it travels. And it is not only one possibility that the Earth is spinning and this is compensating for that at all. Now, one might say, well, why do objects go downward then and not upward? I ask the same question. That's easy. Mass. It's just they have mass. And the natural laws of our planet are that mass falls downward and things with weight go down. And that's just it, okay? Gravity then, if you want to call it that, fine. It's really not as complicated as we make it. It's rather simple. Things with weight go downward, not upward, because they are heavier. So we have this model that is becoming more and more absurd, really, to accept as we look at what this is really saying. And we have other explanations for all of these proofs, it turns out, which supposedly verify that this Earth is doing the impossible, by the way, and we are doing the impossible by staying on its surface, or the unexplained anyway. Actually, I haven't even mentioned that the model that we are taught actually looks more like what I'll show here now with our whole solar system, supposedly whizzing through space with no explanation why or how this is. And by the way, that speed is 828,000 kilometers per hour. Yes, I said 800,000 kilometers per hour. Now, I don't know about anybody else, but I'm dizzy just thinking about all of this. 1,000 miles per hour around an axis, 67,000 miles per hour around the sun, and 828,000 kilometers per hour. The whole thing flying through space, and yet a third direction. In fact, without making any decisions or drawing any conclusions yet, I simply will submit a different model that more accurately explains the very same truths and so-called facts that we are all standing atop some kind of planet, we know that, with some kind of atmosphere and heavens above. That does include the stars and the moon and the planets and the sun, etc., right? But this model will answer the questions that the other mainstream model leaves completely unanswered and does not even, cannot answer. So how do we all exist in this kind of whacked out motion, 3 directions at one time with these dizzying speeds, right? And no one senses or feels a thing. And I've looked that up myself, and I've read explanations. They just don't ring true to me. You know, they say, well, the planet's so big that the 1,000 mile per hour speed is actually very slow, that it's moving under your feet, but 1,000 miles per hour doesn't sound slow to me. Anyway, how do we stay on top of a ball-shaped surface if we are hurtling through this space as this teaching and model says? Why do we see the very same stars and sky from the very same angle and vantage point every single night, and it never changes? Why do we see the very same side of the moon every single night, and it never changes? Perhaps other things are moving and we are not? That's a good question, right? What if the sun was nowhere near 93 million miles away, as we are told? And by the way, no heat could really travel that I know of 93 million miles through freezing cold space all of the way and still be heat. Even if we're talking about light rays, yes, it's 93 million miles, people, is what we are told. It's very difficult to even wrap the human mind around that distance, but it's absurd, really, to me. Anyway, and it never used to be. It used to make sense in some way, but it never made any sense provably. All right, I wonder how many people know what a gyroscope is. All aircraft use this device to navigate and to tell where the horizon is. In other words, to be able to tell which is up from down in direction when they are flying. And it's absolutely crucial to an airplane to have this to be accurate, or they'll run into the ground when they think they're higher up. All right, they make no compensation, however, none of them, none of these gyroscopes, when they plot their courses, pilots, for the curvature of the Earth, which we are told is 8 inches per mile squared. Every mile you go, 8 inches per mile squared drop for the curve. If the Earth curves every mile traveled, as we are told in the mainstream model, then a plane that goes thousands of miles in one straight direction, or straight line, or relatively straight line, in some cases would have to in every case would have to compensate, of course, or it would simply fly straight off of or away from the ball, the curve. Yet none ever do. Yes, there are people who make very fancy claims and use all sorts of mathematics to try to confuse the issue here, but the fact remains that these gyroscopes, you can look it up for yourself, which depend entirely on a flat surface and baseline point for all their functioning, are in fact what are used in all aircraft. And so far, No one or nothing has explained how this could be, so it cannot be accepted, as I stated earlier in this, for the pretenses of this video, as truth on a curved earth, at least in the dimensions and the curvature that we are given in the mainstream model. I can't really say for sure what is going on in our earth and heavens, but I will say that it's not the size and shape, curvature that we are told, because there are far too many unanswered questions, and a lot of airplanes would be crashing if it were. And another of these is the fact that across a so-called curved water surface, or water that is on a curved surface, that's better accurately said, horizons from many miles away can be seen at the same eye level or even laser measured level as the origin point, which of course is impossible on a curved shape with the dimensions that we are taught that the earth is. In fact, some very easy, repeatable experiments can be done of line of sight objects across so-called water on a curved surface, reveal that something is not jiving with the earth curvature that we are taught, because we can see an object and a horizon we should not be able to see based on the curvature of the earth they are telling us. And not only this, but suddenly we are told in mainstream science now, and you can look this up with what's his name, Neil, somebody, Grass Tyson or something like that, that says that they have discovered that the earth is not round any. This is the official position. It's not round anymore, but it's an oblique spheroid. So again, here we have some fancy words and terms that doesn't tell us anything at all, right? After all of the NASA footage and space pictures they just recently discovered, and now all of a sudden the earth is not round anymore. All that was wrong somehow, which I'm confused about, to be honest. I'm sure many are, as I am as well. All right, I'm going to go so far as to say that we just might live on the earth that God said he created, and not what man tries to purport to us, right? With a firmament that God said is there, which is some kind of dome, I guess you could say, and ice walls containing the oceans. And oh, by the way, here are photos of the very ice wall that I'm speaking of. Oh, hang on a sec. We don't need to speculate about this. We can just go there, right, and look for ourselves in Antarctica where these were taken. Well, duh, why didn't I think of that, right? Well, wait a minute. What's that you say? It's not allowed to go there. Huh? What do you mean it's not allowed? Many nations have a treaty to patrol and keep secure an area where nothing exists, supposedly. Some secretive place where nobody can go without some kind of permit. And actually there are many different military navies working together to keep everybody out and away from a place that is desolate and frozen with ice and nothing is there. We can't even easily fly over this area and take pictures to verify any of this. Now I'm really getting confused. After all, I'm only searching for truth, and there is all this secrecy with NASA and with the Antarctica and this place they call Antarctica. Why can planes not fly over this? Why can we not just go there and get a picture to settle all this? Well, I thought it was cut and dry. I guess it's not. I thought NASA had the ability to film and photograph in space with the Earth, and yet the images that we see are all, virtually all, touched up or computer enhanced by a whole department that exists in NASA, as it turns out, that does this with every photo and video. Again, my head is starting to spin like the planet and the galaxy at 67,000 kilometers per hour. You see, the world that we all share, at least in the United States, is the world of facts that we all share, is fed to us. It's facts about everything, and it's fed to us by media sources and scientific models of experts and mathematical equations, and it gets very complicated that most people simply cannot begin to understand. So we are left to our devices, the only device left, which is believing what we see on television and what we find in textbooks and what we see on the internet for the most part and other publications. Most, if not every person on this planet has taken something that was reported by trusted sources in the media that in the case of the media we are quickly finding out now cannot be trusted at all to tell the truth of the time, and some outlets even have political agendas and have no problem at all reporting lies or exaggerations of truth on a daily basis, which makes it very suspect in my opinion. We can clearly see from our current governmental babblings and quibblings that are going on in this country that lies are told in our administration and in our government and in our media to the point, in my view, where none of it can be said to be truth exactly, and none of it can be fully trusted, and sometimes it's no truth at all. I'm not saying that I have all the answers, but I do have all the questions, which should be easily answered by any so-called proven truth, especially if it's scientific, like all the earth facts. And yet every time I try to do so, I end up more frustrated than I started out getting information from trusted so-called professional sources. I know this. I know that God said one thing, and untrustworthy human beings that are influenced by spiritual forces as well, which will be another video, say a whole different story. If I'm betting my money, it's going to be on what God said the earth is, and the stars, and the sun, and the moon as well, for that matter, and not what untrustworthy, unreliable man says. Look at these real images now, taken of stars with the simple Nikon P900 Super Zoom camera. I'm sorry, but they look nothing like either NASA photos of stars are or what we are told stars are from our trusted scientific sources. They look more like lights that were created and set there, as God said He did with the stars, the sun, the moon, and the planets, and not as man defines. Why would they lie, you may ask now? Oh, there's very good reason, both where the lies come from and why they are purported, but I'll examine that in another part of this series, as this is getting to be a bit too long. So thank you for watching. So long for now. I'll see you in chapter 2.